It was a cold, dark evening when Alex decided to walk home after a long day at work. The rain was coming down in heavy sheets, making the streets glisten under the dim light of the street lamps. He had walked this path many times before, but tonight, the air felt different. Something was off. The sound of the rain hitting the pavement was louder than usual, as if it was trying to tell him something. Alex pulled his jacket tighter around his body and quickened his pace, eager to get home and out of the storm. As he walked, his thoughts drifted to his day. It had been long and tiring, and the rain seemed to match his mood. The city was quiet, the streets almost empty, except for the occasional car speeding by. He wished he could hurry home, curl up on the couch, and forget about the world for a while. But then, as he neared the alley near his building, something unusual happened. A soft, desperate meow echoed through the rain. It wasn't the usual sound of a stray cat mewing. It was weak, almost pleading. Alex stopped in his tracks, his heart beating a little faster. He looked around but saw nothing. Only the rain and the dark streets. But then he heard it again. A meow, this time louder, coming from the other side of the alley. Without thinking, Alex walked toward the sound. His shoes squelched in the wet ground as he stepped carefully, trying not to slip. He peered into the alley, his eyes adjusting to the darkness. And that's when he saw it. A small cat, drenched to the bone, was sitting beneath a wooden bench, looking up at him with wide, frightened eyes. The cat's fur was matted with rain, its tiny body shivering. It looked so vulnerable, so helpless, that Alex's heart ached. The alley was quiet, and the rain seemed to fall heavier now, as if the world itself was holding its breath. For a moment, Alex just stood there, unsure of what to do. He was tired, cold, and didn't have time to deal with a stray cat, but something about the creature's eyes stopped him from walking away. They weren't like the eyes of any cat he had seen before. They were almost human. They seemed to be asking for help, as if the cat knew Alex was the only one who could save it from the storm. Alex's mind raced. He didn't have time for this. He was on his way home, and this was just another stray. But as he stood there, staring at the cat, something inside him shifted. The loneliness he had been feeling all day suddenly felt heavier. Maybe this cat wasn't just a random stray. Maybe it had appeared for a reason. Maybe he needed to help it. He crouched down slowly, careful not to scare the cat. "Hey there, little one," he whispered softly, his voice barely audible over the rain. The cat didn't move, but its eyes locked onto his. It was as if it understood him. Taking a deep breath, Alex reached out his hand, and after a brief pause, the cat tentatively stepped toward him, shivering. It was so small, so fragile. Alex's heart melted as he carefully scooped it up into his arms, trying to protect it from the cold. The cat let out a quiet purr, settling into his embrace, and Alex felt a warmth spread through him, a feeling he hadn't felt in a long time. He stood up, holding the wet cat gently in his arms. "Come on," he muttered to himself. "Let's get you out of the rain." With the cat cradled against his chest, he turned and walked toward his building, his steps steady despite the weight of the storm around him. As he entered the building, he was greeted by the usual warmth of the lobby, and Alex's thoughts slowly returned to the present. He hadn't expected his walk home to turn out like this. He had only planned to get out of the rain, but now he was carrying a soaked, shivering cat. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to do next, but he couldn't just leave it out there. Alex made his way to his apartment, his mind still buzzing with questions. Why was the cat out there in the rain? How had it ended up in such a state? And why did it seem so familiar? Once inside, Alex took off his jacket and set the cat on the couch. He went to grab a towel to dry the little creature off. As he did, he glanced back at the cat, who was now sitting up, its eyes fixed on him, as though it were studying him. Alex couldn't help but shiver, a feeling of unease creeping up his spine. Something about this cat felt different. It wasn't just a stray looking for food and shelter. There was something more to it. But what? Alex's thoughts were interrupted when the cat let out a soft meow, almost as if it was trying to say something. He froze. He couldn't explain why, but the sound of that meow felt almost like a message, and the way the cat stared at him, with those deep, knowing eyes, made him feel like it was waiting for him to understand something. He had no idea what that something was, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this cat was important. It had somehow found its way into his life for a reason. As he finished drying the cat off and set it up on a blanket, Alex couldn't help but wonder, was this just an ordinary stray or was something more at play? The rain was still pouring outside, but the feeling of mystery lingered in the air, just as heavy as the storm. The next morning, Alex woke up to a soft, contented purring sound. He opened his eyes, still tired from the night before, and glanced down at the couch. There, curled up in a small ball, was the same cat he had found in the rain. The little creature had dried off overnight and seemed much more at ease, its fur now soft and fluffy. The cat was sleeping soundly, its tiny body rising and falling with each breath. Alex sat up and stretched, but as he did, the cat's ears perked up. It blinked its big, wide eyes and looked directly at him. The moment their gazes met, Alex felt a strange sensation in his chest. It was as if the cat was looking right into him, like it knew something about him, something he didn't even know about himself. The cat slowly stood up and stretched its little body, then hopped off the couch and padded over to Alex. It circled his legs for a moment, rubbing its face against his shin in a gentle greeting. Alex smiled and bent down to pet it, but just as his hand touched its soft fur, something strange happened. The cat looked up at him again, its eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made Alex's heart race. It was almost as if the cat was trying to tell him something without speaking. Alex's mind began to wander. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a deep connection with this cat. He had never been one for pets. He'd never really cared about having animals around. But this cat felt different. It wasn't just a cute little creature looking for food or shelter. There was something more to it, something Alex couldn't quite put his finger on. As the day went on, Alex found himself thinking about the cat more and more. He went about his usual routine, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the little animal. Every time he walked past the couch, he noticed the cat watching him with those knowing eyes. It didn't seem to follow him around like most cats, but instead, it just sat there, quietly observing him. It felt as if the cat was studying him, trying to figure him out as much as he was trying to figure it out. When Alex sat down to eat lunch, the cat jumped up onto the table and sat beside him, watching him with its large eyes. At first, Alex was a little surprised, but he didn't mind. He found the cat's presence oddly comforting, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel as alone. It was as if the cat had become a companion, a silent one, but one that made him feel less isolated. That evening, as the sky grew darker and the rain started to fall again, Alex decided to take a walk to clear his head. He opened the door to his apartment, and the cat immediately darted to the door, mewing softly, as if it wanted to go with him. Alex hesitated for a moment. He hadn't planned on bringing the cat, but something about its pleading eyes made him rethink. He knelt down and gently picked it up, cradling it in his arms. "All right, little one," Alex said, his voice soft. "Let's go for a walk, then." The rain had lightened to a drizzle, and the streets were empty, just like the night before. Alex carried the cat with him, and as they walked down the street, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. The world around him seemed quieter, almost as if the rain itself had quieted down to make way for this strange connection between him and the cat. They walked for a while, with the cat nestled comfortably in Alex's arms. The street lamps flickered in the distance, and Alex could hear the sound of his own footsteps echoing in the stillness. He had no particular destination in mind. It was just a walk, a simple, peaceful moment in the middle of the night. But as they reached the edge of the alley where Alex had found the cat the night before, the little creature in his arms suddenly grew restless. It squirmed slightly, as if it wanted to be put down. Alex paused and looked down at the cat. Its eyes were wide, its ears pricked up, and it seemed to be staring intently at something ahead. Alex followed its gaze, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Just the dark alley, the wet ground, and the empty street. But the cat's behavior was enough to make Alex pause. "Do you sense something?" he muttered, more to himself than to the cat. The cat didn't respond but continued to stare ahead, its body tense. Alex took a few cautious steps into the alley, the cat still in his arms. As he moved forward, the cat's eyes remained fixed on something ahead, and Alex could feel a strange energy in the air, as if something was about to happen. Suddenly, the cat let out a soft meow, louder this time, and wiggled out of Alex's arms. It landed gracefully on the ground, its small paws making no sound as it trotted ahead, its eyes still locked on whatever lay in the distance. Alex stood frozen, watching the cat move forward. There was no explanation for why the cat seemed so intent on something, but he knew he couldn't let it go alone. "Hey, wait," Alex called softly, taking a few quick steps to catch up. The cat didn't respond but kept walking, moving deeper into the alley. Alex's curiosity got the better of him, and he followed, his heart pounding. He couldn't explain why, but something inside him told him this was important. This cat had led him here for a reason, and he had to find out what it was. As Alex followed the cat deeper into the alley, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something much larger than he had ever imagined. And the further he walked, the more certain he became that this strange bond with the cat wasn't just a coincidence. Alex's heart raced as he followed the cat deeper into the alley. The street lamps behind him flickered and faded as the shadows grew longer. The rain had stopped completely, leaving only a damp, cool air that wrapped around him like a blanket. The world felt quieter now, almost like everything had paused, waiting for something. The cat moved with purpose, its small paws silent against the wet ground. It was almost as if it knew exactly where it was going, as if it had a destination in mind. Alex hesitated for a moment, but then followed, his curiosity pulling him forward. He couldn't explain why, but he felt like he had no choice. The cat had led him this far, and now he had to know what would happen next. The alley twisted and turned, becoming narrower with every step. Alex glanced around, but the surroundings seemed unfamiliar, like they were part of a place he had never seen before. The usual sights of the city, the parked cars, the shops, the quiet streets, were nowhere to be found. It was as if the world had shifted, and he had entered another realm entirely. The cat stopped suddenly, just ahead of Alex. It sat down on its haunches and stared up at something in front of it, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Alex squinted, trying to see what had caught the cat's attention. At first he saw nothing but a brick wall, covered in old, peeling posters and the shadows that stretched across the ground. Then, as his eyes adjusted, Alex saw it, a small, narrow doorway hidden behind the wall, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. It was old, weathered, and barely noticeable. The cat stood up again and walked toward the door, its body moving with the same confident stride it had shown all night. "Is this where you wanted to go?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't sure who he was speaking to, the cat or himself, but there was something about this place, this alley, and the mysterious door that felt wrong, like it was part of something larger and darker. The cat didn't respond but paused in front of the door, looking back at Alex. Its eyes were full of something Alex couldn't quite understand. There was a look in its gaze that seemed to say, "You have to go through this. You have to follow me." Alex stood still for a moment, his mind racing. He had come this far. Should he open the door? Was he ready to step into the unknown? But the cat's stare held him in place, and he knew, without a doubt, that he couldn't just walk away. Something about this moment felt too important, too much like a turning point in his life. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he touched the cold, rusty doorknob. It creaked loudly as he turned it, echoing through the alley. Alex's breath caught in his throat as the door slowly opened, revealing a small, dimly lit room beyond. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of old wood and earth filled his nostrils. It looked like an abandoned storage space, empty, save for a few old crates and boxes scattered around the floor. But there was something about the room that made Alex uneasy. It felt alive, as if it was waiting for him to step inside. The cat walked in first, its little paws making no sound as it disappeared into the shadows. Alex stood in the doorway for a moment, unsure whether to follow. His instincts told him to turn back, to walk away and forget everything that had happened. But another part of him, the part that had followed the cat through the rain and into the alley, urged him to move forward. With a deep breath, Alex stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind him, and for a moment, the silence was overwhelming. He took a few steps into the room, his eyes scanning the darkness. The cat was nowhere to be seen, but he could hear its soft, rhythmic purring coming from the corner of the room. The sound seemed to echo off the walls, creating an eerie, unsettling feeling. Alex moved toward the sound, his heart thumping in his chest. The further he walked, the stranger the room felt. The air seemed thicker here, heavier, as if something was watching him. The shadows danced around him, and the only sound he could hear was the cat's quiet purring, almost like a whisper, drawing him deeper into the room. When he reached the corner, he stopped. There, lying on a small, worn-out rug, was the cat, staring up at him with those intense eyes. But this time, there was something different about the cat's gaze. It was no longer just watching him. It was waiting for him to understand something. Alex knelt down slowly, his hands trembling. He had no idea what was going on, but everything in his body told him this was the moment. The cat had led him here for a reason, and now it was up to him to figure out what that reason was. As he reached out to touch the cat, the room seemed to shift, the shadows flickering and stretching unnaturally. Alex froze, his hand hovering over the cat's head. The air grew colder, and a chill ran down his spine. The cat's purring had stopped, and in the silence, Alex heard a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. It wasn't a voice, but a feeling, an understanding, like the room itself was trying to communicate with him. And in that moment, Alex realized that he wasn't just in an abandoned room anymore. He had crossed into something else, something far beyond his understanding. The cat's eyes never left his, and for the first time, Alex felt like he wasn't alone. Something was out there, something watching, something waiting for him to make his next move. But what was it? What was this strange place, and why had the cat brought him here? The answers seemed just out of reach, and Alex felt a growing sense of unease. But one thing was certain. Whatever this was, whatever the cat had led him to, it was only the beginning. The room felt colder now, the silence pressing in on Alex from all sides. As his hand hovered just above the cat's fur, the air seemed to thicken, as if something was closing in on him. A strange, almost unnoticeable shift occurred, like the room was no longer just a room, but something far more significant. The walls felt closer now, and the shadows stretched unnaturally, moving like dark, twisting figures around him. Alex pulled his hand back, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure what was happening, but the sensation of being watched was overwhelming. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to leave, to turn and run out the door. But his feet wouldn't move. It was as if something had rooted him to the spot. The cat, still lying on the rug, didn't move. Its eyes never left Alex, and in those eyes, Alex saw something that chilled him to his core, a deep knowing. The cat wasn't just an animal anymore. It was something more. It had led him here, but now it felt like it was waiting for him to understand something. Something he wasn't ready to face. Suddenly, a soft, barely audible whisper filled the room. At first, Alex thought it was just the wind, but it was too clear, too close. The whisper was so faint that he could barely make out the words, but it felt like it was coming from all around him, from the very walls themselves. "Come closer," the whisper seemed to say. "You are meant to see it." The words sent a shiver down Alex's spine. He scanned the room frantically, his eyes darting from corner to corner, but he couldn't see anything unusual. No one was there, just the cat, staring at him, its gaze unwavering. But the whisper continued, echoing in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was waiting for him to do something. Against his better judgment, Alex took a step forward. His foot made no sound on the cold floor, and yet the room seemed to shift as he moved. The shadows grew longer, stretching toward him, curling around his legs like living creatures. He could almost feel their cold, empty touch on his skin, but when he looked down, there was nothing there. The whispering grew louder now, swirling around him, making his head spin. He couldn't tell if it was coming from the walls or his own mind, but it didn't matter. The feeling of being drawn into something much bigger than himself was undeniable. It was as if the very air in the room was alive, aware of his every move, pulling him deeper into its mystery. "Come closer." The whisper was clearer now, more insistent. Alex's breath caught in his throat. His body felt heavy, like he was moving through thick water. He took another step forward, drawn by the pull of the voice, the weight of the shadows pressing against him. He reached out toward the cat, but as his fingers touched the air, it felt colder than ice. The cat didn't move. Its eyes, however, seemed to gleam brighter now, like tiny lights in the dark. There was something otherworldly about its stare, something that Alex couldn't comprehend. It wasn't just a cat anymore. It was the key, the guide, the force that had brought him here. And it was waiting for him to follow. With his heart racing, Alex knelt down beside the cat. The air grew even colder, and the whispers around him turned into faint murmurs, as though the room was alive with voices from the past, voices that had been waiting for him. He felt the weight of their presence pressing against his chest, but his hand reached out anyway, trembling. The moment his fingers brushed against the cat's soft fur, everything changed. The room seemed to snap into focus, like a blurry image suddenly becoming clear. Alex's vision sharpened, and he could see things he hadn't noticed before. The walls, which had once seemed like solid stone, now appeared to be covered in strange symbols, their meaning hidden, as if they were part of an ancient language. The shadows in the corners of the room now appeared to move, shifting and curling like dark smoke, and the air around him felt electric, alive with energy. The cat let out a soft meow, almost like a warning. Alex's pulse quickened as he realized the truth. He was no longer just a visitor in this strange place. He had crossed a boundary, stepped into something that wasn't meant for ordinary people. This room, this cat, it was part of a larger world, a world hidden from sight, filled with secrets and forces Alex could never have imagined. The whispers grew louder again, but now they were joined by something else, soft, rhythmic tapping, like the sound of feet walking in a pattern. Alex turned his head, trying to locate the source, but there was nothing in the room except him and the cat. The tapping grew louder, more distinct, and then it stopped. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. Then, from the far corner of the room, a low, groaning sound filled the air. Alex spun around, his heart hammering in his chest. The shadows seemed to melt away, and in their place, something dark, something ancient began to take shape. It was impossible to describe, but it looked like a figure made entirely of shadow, with glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. It didn't move, but it was there, watching, waiting. Alex froze. The cat, still sitting at his feet, let out a low growl, its tail twitching nervously. The figure in the shadows didn't speak, but it didn't need to. Its presence was enough to send a wave of dread washing over Alex. "What is this?" Alex whispered, his voice shaking. The figure didn't answer, but the cat began to move. It stood up slowly, its eyes locked onto the shadowy figure. The cat walked toward it, unafraid, as if it knew exactly what was happening. Alex's mind raced. The cat had brought him here. But what was this creature? What was this place? And why had it all started with a simple encounter in the rain? The figure remained silent, its glowing eyes still fixed on Alex. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. The shadows seemed to fold back into the corners of the room, and the tapping stopped. The air became still once more. Alex stood there, his legs shaking beneath him. The cat walked back to his side, its eyes never leaving him. There was a sense of finality in the room, as if something had been revealed, something Alex wasn't ready to understand. But one thing was clear: the mystery had only just begun. Alex's heart still raced from the sudden appearance of the shadowy figure. The room had gone eerily quiet, but the sense of unease never left. It was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. The cat, as calm as ever, sat beside him, its eyes glowing in the dim light. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he had stepped into something far bigger than he had ever imagined. He had followed a cat into an alley, but now he was standing in a room that seemed to defy all logic, surrounded by strange whispers and shadows that moved on their own. What had he stumbled into? The cat's gaze met his, as though it was urging him to keep going, to face whatever it was that lay ahead. But what was it? What did the cat want him to understand? Why am I here? Alex whispered to the empty room, though he wasn't sure if he was asking the cat or the shadows that still lingered in the corners. What do you want from me? The cat didn't answer, of course, but there was something in its eyes, something deep and ancient, as if it had seen things Alex could never imagine, things that had been hidden from the world for a long time. Alex swallowed hard, his mind racing. He had to know more. He had to find out the truth. He turned back to the corner where the shadowy figure had appeared. It was gone now, but Alex could still feel its presence, like a lingering chill in the air. He took a step toward the spot, his breath caught in his throat. The floor creaked beneath him, and the room seemed to grow even colder. The symbols on the walls, which had once seemed like just patterns, now looked like something more, something important, something that could hold the key to everything. Without thinking, Alex reached out and touched one of the symbols. The moment his fingers made contact with the cold stone, a shock ran through his body. It wasn't painful, but it was intense, like an electric current. He pulled his hand back, but the symbol seemed to glow beneath his touch. It pulsed with a faint light, as though it were alive. The room shifted again, and Alex felt the air grow thick with tension. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to move, stretching toward him, but not in a threatening way. It was more like they were guiding him, leading him to something important. His pulse quickened as the whispers began again, louder this time. "Follow the light," the whispering voices said, clearer than ever before. "The truth is closer than you think." Alex felt a strange pull in his chest. The shadows, the whispers, the glowing symbol, it was all connected. But how? What did it all mean? The cat meowed softly beside him, breaking his thoughts. It stood up and walked over to the far wall, where the light from the symbol was now shining brighter. The cat looked back at Alex, its eyes urging him to follow. Without hesitation, Alex followed the cat, his feet moving almost on their own. It was like he was being pulled by something beyond his control. He reached the wall where the cat had stopped and looked closely at the symbol. As he stared at it, something incredible happened. The symbol began to shift. The lines rearranged themselves, the shapes changing, as if the stone itself was alive and moving. Alex gasped, taking a step back. It wasn't just a symbol. It was part of something bigger, something ancient. The wall in front of him seemed to dissolve, revealing a hidden doorway that Alex had not seen before. It was small, almost invisible, and it seemed to lead deeper into the unknown. The cat walked toward the doorway, its tail flicking in the air. It looked back at Alex, as if to say, "This is it. This is the next step." Alex's heart raced. He had come so far. He had followed the cat into this strange, hidden world, and now it was leading him to something even more mysterious. The doorway looked dark, and Alex couldn't see what lay beyond it. But the cat was waiting, and he knew that if he hesitated now, he would never know the truth. He stepped forward, his hand resting on the cool doorframe. The moment he touched it, the door creaked open, and a rush of cold air swept over him. The room beyond was dark, but Alex could just make out the faintest hint of light coming from deep inside. "Go ahead," a soft voice whispered in his ear. The voice was familiar now, though he couldn't place where it had come from. "The truth lies ahead." Alex took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness. The door closed behind him, and the room was silent again. But this time, there was no fear, no doubt. He knew he was on the right path. The cat had brought him here for a reason, and whatever was waiting in the darkness, he was ready to face it. Alex stepped cautiously into the darkness. The air around him felt thick, almost suffocating, like something was pressing down on him from all sides. He could no longer see the walls of the room, but he could feel the floor beneath his feet. It was cold, uneven, and damp, like he was walking through an old, forgotten tunnel. The cat was still beside him, moving silently through the dark. Its glowing eyes were the only thing Alex could focus on. They shone with an almost unnatural light, guiding him forward like a beacon in the pitch-black night. Without the cat, he would have been lost in the darkness. "Where are we going?" Alex whispered, his voice barely audible in the stillness. The words felt strange in his mouth, as though the very air was swallowing them up. The cat didn't answer, of course, but it kept moving ahead, its paws making no sound on the cold ground. Alex followed without question, even though every instinct in his body told him to turn back, to leave this strange, terrifying place behind. But he couldn't. Not now. Not when he was so close to understanding. The path ahead seemed endless, stretching into the unknown. The farther they walked, the darker it became. The faint glow from the cat's eyes was all that kept Alex from losing his way. And yet, despite the oppressive darkness, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. There was something, or someone, watching them, lurking just out of sight. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a low guttural sound. It echoed from somewhere deep within the darkness, a noise that seemed to vibrate through Alex's bones. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. The cat's ears twitched and its body tensed, but it didn't stop walking. The sound grew louder, closer, as if whatever was making it was drawing nearer. Alex's heart pounded in his chest, and he instinctively took a step back. His hand brushed against the cold stone wall to his left, and the rough texture sent a shiver through his body. There was no way back now. He had to face whatever was ahead. The cat meowed softly, a low, comforting sound, and Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He couldn't let fear stop him now. Not when he was so close to uncovering the truth. Whatever was waiting in the dark, he had to see it through. The path twisted and turned, narrowing as they went deeper into the unknown. The whispers from earlier were now louder, swirling around him like a whirlwind. They seemed to come from all directions, but Alex couldn't understand the words. It was as if the whispers were speaking in a language he didn't know, a language from another time, another world. "Stay close," the voice inside his head urged. It was the same voice that had whispered to him before, the one that had guided him into the room with the cat. "You are close, but not everyone is meant to see what you will find. Be careful." Alex's heart skipped a beat. Who was speaking to him? Was it the cat? Or was it something else? He didn't know, but the urgency in the voice made him keep moving forward. And then suddenly, they arrived at a small clearing. The darkness was still thick, but the air felt different here, charged, alive. There was a faint, eerie glow ahead, flickering like a distant flame. The cat stopped and looked back at Alex, as if waiting for him to catch up. As Alex stepped closer, the glow grew stronger, and he could see that it was coming from a stone pedestal in the center of the clearing. On the pedestal was a small, ancient-looking object, a key. It glowed with the same eerie light as the cat's eyes, and Alex could feel its power, even from a distance. His hand reached out instinctively, drawn to the key like a magnet. But as his fingers brushed the cold metal, a wave of energy surged through his body, and he felt something shift, something inside him, as if the world itself had tilted. The whispers grew louder again, a cacophony of voices that filled his mind. He couldn't understand what they were saying, but he could feel the weight of their words, their warnings, their secrets. The key wasn't just a key, it was a gateway to something far greater, something that Alex was not sure he was ready to face. But it was too late to turn back now. He had come this far, followed the cat, uncovered the secrets of the room and the shadows. He had seen things that no one else would believe, and now the key was in his hand. The cat watched him with its glowing eyes, as if urging him to make a choice. Alex held the key tightly, feeling its energy pulse through his fingers. He didn't know what would happen when he turned it, but he knew he couldn't stop. The moment had come. The next step was waiting for him. With a deep breath, Alex placed the key into the small lock in front of him. The moment it clicked into place, the ground beneath his feet began to tremble, and the air grew heavier, thicker. The darkness seemed to close in around him. But the light from the key burned bright, pushing back the shadows. The whispers were gone now. Silence. A deep, unnerving silence. The cat let out a soft meow, and Alex turned to look at it one last time. "What happens now?" he whispered. But the cat didn't answer. It was no longer by his side. And as Alex stood there, with the key in his hand, a new sense of dread washed over him. He had unlocked something that was not meant to be disturbed. What lay beyond the door? The answer was coming, and it was something Alex was not prepared for. Alex stood frozen, the key still clutched tightly in his hand. The moment he had turned it, everything had changed. The ground beneath his feet had trembled, and the darkness had swallowed the room. But now, a strange quiet filled the air. The whispers had stopped, and the light from the key was the only thing that illuminated the dark space around him. He felt a shiver run down his spine. What was happening? What had he unlocked? As if in answer, the air around him seemed to shift. The shadows, which had once seemed like a distant threat, now moved toward him. But this time, they didn't feel threatening. They felt familiar. The shadows took shape, swirling around him, forming something he could almost recognize. Suddenly, the cat appeared. But this was no ordinary cat. Its glowing eyes were brighter, its fur shimmering with an otherworldly glow. It walked toward him slowly, its movements graceful but purposeful. "You've done it," the cat's voice echoed in his mind. It was the same voice that had whispered to him before, but now it was clearer, more powerful. "You've opened the way." Alex's heart raced. What is this? What have I done? The cat paused in front of him, its eyes locking with his. "You've unlocked the truth. Everything you've seen, the shadows, the whispers, the key, it was all leading to this moment. You've been chosen, Alex. Chosen to see the truth that others cannot." Alex was confused. Chosen? But why me? I'm just an ordinary guy. I don't understand. The cat's eyes softened, a strange warmth in them. "You were never ordinary. Not to us. You have a connection to this place, to the secrets it holds. The shadows you followed, the whispers you've heard, they've been guiding you here, to this point. To open the door." Alex took a step back, his mind racing. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. It didn't make sense. But what is this place? What is all of this? The cat stared at him for a long moment before it spoke again, its voice filled with ancient wisdom. "This is a place between worlds, a place where time and space do not follow the rules you know. Here, the truth is hidden, locked away from the eyes of those who are not meant to see it. But you have opened the door. And now, you will see it. With a flick of its tail, the cat stepped aside, revealing a strange, glowing door that had appeared in the wall. It was different from the one Alex had opened before. This door pulsed with energy, its surface shimmering as if it were alive. "The truth lies beyond that door," the cat said. "But know this, what you see will change everything. It will change how you see the world, how you see yourself. Are you ready?" Alex swallowed hard. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, questions, and doubts. He had come so far, followed the cat through so many twists and turns, faced shadows and whispers. And now it was time to face whatever lay behind that door. Could he handle it? Could he understand the truth? The cat's gaze seemed to answer for him. "There is no going back, Alex. You've already taken the first step. Now you must finish the journey." Alex nodded, though his heart pounded in his chest. He knew he had to go forward. He couldn't turn back now. Whatever the truth was, it had been waiting for him. And he had unlocked it. He had no choice but to see it through. With one last glance at the cat, he took a deep breath and stepped toward the glowing door. His hand trembled as he reached out, and as his fingers touched the cool surface, a jolt of energy shot through him, stronger than anything he had felt before. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a brilliant light that seemed to stretch endlessly, far beyond the walls of the room. Alex hesitated for a moment, the overwhelming energy of the light pulling at him. But then he stepped through. The world around him shifted, and he was no longer in the dark room. He found himself standing in a place unlike anything he had ever seen. It was like a dream, but it felt real. The air was filled with the scent of something sweet, and the sky above was a deep, endless blue. There were creatures, strange, beautiful beings, that moved around him, their forms glowing softly. And standing in front of him was a figure, tall and wise, with eyes that seemed to see into his very soul. "You have come," the figure said, its voice calm but powerful. "You have unlocked the truth." Alex felt his breath catch in his throat. This was it, the truth. The thing he had been seeking, the thing that had been hidden for so long, was finally revealed. The figure smiled, but there was sadness in its eyes. "But know this, Alex, the truth is not just a gift. It is a responsibility. The world you knew will never be the same. And you, too, will never be the same." Alex's mind swirled with questions. He wanted to ask what this place was, what the truth was, what it all meant. But the figure only shook its head. "Some things are meant to be felt, not understood. Now that you have seen the truth, your journey has only just begun." And with that, the figure stepped aside, allowing Alex to see what lay beyond. It was a vast, endless landscape, filled with wonders and mysteries he could not yet comprehend. The cat, still by his side, looked up at him, its glowing eyes filled with wisdom. "You have done it, Alex. You have unlocked the door to a new world. And now, you will walk the path that few ever do." Alex took a deep breath and looked ahead. His heart was filled with awe and fear. But he knew one thing for sure. His journey was far from over.